Today I'm going to talk about every guy's worst nightmare, especially if you carry appendix. If you're not thinking about this every single time you holster or unholster your weapon, you've probably gotten complacent. I watched a video, and a lot of you have probably seen it, by Northwind Aerial, and I think brave is the right word here. This guy did what most guys' pride would never let them do, and that is he posted a video about a very embarrassing and life-altering event where, while drawing his weapon from appendix, while teaching a class, it sounds like, the gun went off. The chief of staff took a round, and he's in recovery and seems to be doing well. Guy's going to make full recovery, but he calls out in the video that the difference in him being alive or dead, making that video or not making that video, is 3 degrees.
It's a miracle that I'm alive. 3 degrees difference in aim, and that bullet would have been in my femoral artery.
So today I'm going to talk about what I think he hoped the conversation would open up to, is what can we do to mitigate that risk? Because I carry appendix, but there is one gun that I will carry appendix. And look, if you're like me and you saw that video, you heard that story, what was your first thought? Freaking 320. Bet you anything is a freaking 320. No, it's a Glock. And if you were to put out a poll on, hey, if you had to pick one striker fired gun that you had to carry appendix, what gun would you pick? I guarantee you Glock wins that poll. So I carry a Glock, but I've taken some extra steps to mitigate the risk. I want to talk about those things and what you can do to just be a little bit safer and a little bit more conscious about what's going on when you're pointing a gun at the boys. Let's get into it. Shooter, make ready. Are you ready? Stand by. First things first, I want to cover a little bit of a safety briefing here today. This is my Glock 19. I'll talk about the gun here in a moment, but I want to show you what I do when I'm doing demonstrations like this, or when I am doing dry fire training in my house. I do something that's just a little bit extra safety. First thing is, I have a barrel plug that goes into the gun. There we go. It goes into the barrel like that. I have to use a rod to pull that out. That makes it so that even if I made a terrible mistake, I can't get a bullet into the gun. And now I can dry fire the gun and it operates as if everything's fine. And then I also have a dummy bullet that goes in the top there that allows me to rack the slide and it doesn't get hung up on my magazine. So I can do dry fire training. And my gun, I know, is rendered inoperable while I'm doing these kind of demonstrations. So make sure you do something when you're doing dry fire training or anything like this. There is no ammo in this room. Nothing. It is in another room in another place, so that I am not. There's no risk of me, because I'll tell you right here, right now, I've had an accidental discharge, a negligent discharge. That happened to me when my wife and I first got married. She had never been around guns, and unfortunately, she was in the room when I had a negligent discharge. And I'll tell you what happened. I followed my rules, but I allowed one to be broken. I did not. I was cleaning the gun. I was in my living room. We lived in a small trailer at the time. We were in college. I had just been to the range. I was cleaning my gun on like a coffee table. As I cleaned the gun, my ammo, my magazines, everything like that were in another room. They were in the kitchen, and so I had all of that on the cabinet in the kitchen, and I had finished cleaning the gun when a buddy of mine walked in the house. Buddy comes in the house and says, "Wow, is this your new gun?" And I said, "Yeah, it's really cool. I just finished putting it back together." I opened the chamber and I handed him the gun. He took the gun and was looking at it and everything, and I put away all my cleaning material and took my eyes off of him. He walks back over and hands me the gun. When I dry fired, I pointed the gun at we live in the desert, and we had an AC unit on this trailer that was mounted in a window, and there was a piece of plywood next to that AC unit. And when I was dry firing, I pointed in the safest place possible and the least likely thing to do damage. And I fired into that piece of plywood across the room. The remaining firearm safety rules that I did follow kept me from having a very tragic day. But I allowed that gun to leave my possession and I did not check it when it was handed back to me. And what he had done is he went over and I had a magazine that had a couple rounds left in it from the range. He picked up that mag, put it in the gun because he wanted to see what it felt like with the magazine in it, handed me back that gun without telling me that he had loaded the gun. And it didn't occur to me. I never dreamed of a scenario where I would hand them a loaded gun and or an unloaded gun and they would hand me a loaded one in return. But I promise you this, I added a step into my process. I do not just close a slide and dry fire if that gun has been out of my possession. It was a dumb mistake and could have had a tragic end if I hadn't followed the other rules. That's an embarrassing story. I hate telling that story. I can't imagine the embarrassment or the pride hit it's taking Northwind Aerial to have the open the discussion that he's opening, and I'm grateful that he's having that because I think these are some important things to talk about. Okay, so again, this is my Glock 19. I'll tell you a little bit about this gun. I have a tactical Johnny Glock's trigger on this gun. I really like the Johnny Glock triggers. I trust them. That's the only aftermarket trigger that I'll put in a carry gun. That's the only trigger that I'll carry and trust and point at my boys with that trigger in there. I won't do it with any other aftermarket trigger. That's just me because this one's earned my trust. You're going to have yours that I'm not saying you should trust this one. I'm saying find one you trust it for very good reasons, understand how it works before you just grab a trigger, put it in the gun, do some basic testing that they told you to do, and trust that it's not going to go off pointed at you. Right now, for testing purposes, I'm running tests as you may have seen on my channel. I've got the Canic Prime Radian, and I'm doing apples to apples comparisons right now with that Canic Prime Radian and my Glock 19. And so for apples to apples comparisons, currently have the Radian Ramjet on this Glock 19. Additionally, I've got some grip work that's obviously done to the gun to make it fit my hand a little bit better. And then finally, I want to talk about the safety feature that I have on this gun that makes this the one gun that I will carry. I want to talk for a moment about airplanes. I studied to be a pilot when I was young. I grew up. My grandmother, my uncle ran an FBO. He was a fixed base operator for an airport in New Mexico, and I spent every summer around aircraft, fueling aircraft, working with slurry bombers with the Forest Service and things. And it's part of my DNA is flying, and I tried to pick a hobby that was less expensive than being a pilot, and I'm not sure I did that actually. But one thing I remember from my flight training, and one thing that my instructor kind of beat into my head was the two most likely places that you're going to crash your aircraft: takeoffs and landings. I think that analogy sticks pretty close here. The two most common places that you're going to have a problem carrying your gun where you are likely to have a negligent discharge or takeoff and landing, reholstering or unholstering your gun. Those are the two times where if you're gonna have something happen, that's when it's gonna be. Let's talk about landings first, because when you start carrying a gun, you're always actually putting it into position. So my analogy for that is landing. I have a landing device that to me makes this a gun that I am willing to point at the boys. And that is, as you can see here on the back of that gun, I think you can kind of see that back plate sticks out funny. This is by Langdon Tactical. They're a local company here in Arizona. And this is a striker control device. Okay. Um, they make them for several different brands of guns. This is the only one that I own. Therefore, this is the only gun that I will carry Appendix. I carry other Glocks. I have a P365 that I will carry, and I will carry the new Canic Radiant. But none of those guns will I carry Appendix. This one only. Why? Well, let me show you how this works because I think the most likely place and the time that I am like most conscious of what is happening is holstering Appendix. So I'm going to show you the mechanics of how this does, and then I'll stand up and holster the gun for you. You can see how this works. Okay. You can see this is sticking out. This thing just pushes back in place. Okay. But again, I'm just gonna show again because I'll do this myself. I know the gun is safe, but I'm checking it again. Okay, so because I'm pointing it at a place I would never want the gun to go off that way. Now here we go. Here we go. I'm gonna put my thumb on the back here. Well, yeah. Let's do it this way. I think you can see it like this. Okay. Now if I pull that trigger, you see that lift? So as I pull the trigger, you can see that that is lifting. See that? I'm going to put my thumb back here, and you can see when I pull the trigger, my thumb moves. See that? Okay. So I can feel as I'm putting this gun into the holster, if something catches on that trigger, guys, it is obvious from your thumb. But the other thing that happens is if I apply thumb pressure and I'm putting the downward pressure on the gun with the thumb and I'm applying that pressure, I cannot pull the trigger. That gun cannot go off because my thumb is preventing that striker plate from coming back. In order for that gun to go off, you'll see the striker plate comes all the way back and then it breaks. Okay? Comes back. So if I prevent that from coming back with my thumb just being there, the gun cannot be fired. So, with that safety device in place, as I'm carrying Appendix, thumb on the back, so you know what's going in. I look, and my thumb is the primary source of that downward pressure. Okay. So again, gun is ready to go. Thumb on the back plate. I'm looking down. I do not take my eyes off the goal here, guys. I do not. I'm not looking somewhere else or thinking about anything else when I put this thing away. I'm the primary pressure is coming from my thumb. I put that in place, and I know absolutely that that gun can't go off when you're drawing the gun. Okay. This is the scenario that likely happened as he was pulling the gun out. Because it's a backwards pressure there, it's unlikely that something besides his finger got on that trigger, right? If you're pulling if you're pulling the gun backwards, it's very unlikely that something is going to put forward pressure on the trigger. So as he came out of the holster, he likely had his finger ready to go. He likely has shorter hands than I do. And that pressure that he had on his holster, or the pressure he had on his holster, his finger slipped into and the gun went off. Now, I have a little bit of an advantage. I have giant hands, and my finger extends well beyond the trigger guard. But if I got a bad grip, or whatever it might be, if I reached in and had a bad grip and didn't feel it in the rest of my hand, and I had downward pressure on my belt buckle or wherever it was, and I'm pushing as that comes as the gun comes out and I'm pushing against the surface, my finger Rick jump right here it's slapping. That's the trigger that is slapping against. So if I'm putting when I grip, and when you do this, guys, do it. Grip. Your finger moves. So as you tighten your grip, if your finger is in that at all, when you tighten your grip and it slips past, guys, that your trigger finger can get in there. So what do I do? I have a, look, I'm not trying, let me just get back where you see my face. I'm not trying to go as fast as I possibly can. when I'm drawing appendix. I'm not trying to break any world records. I'm not in competition. I'm looking for smooth and I'm looking to create mechanical muscle. I hate the term muscle memory, but I'm trying to create muscle memory. So I have my finger is so extended, and you can see that it is way away from the gun. And that's how I train and practice that every time. So that if that costs me a little bit of time as I get on target and then put my trigger, fine. I'll take that. But I don't want to have my finger dancing around the trigger guard as soon as that thing comes out. It's the last thing I want. I want my finger well away from the gun, and then once I'm getting on to target, fine. Now, when I'm shooting competition and I'm coming from 3 o'clock or whatever that is, heck yeah, I'm on that trigger because if I let one off a little bit early before when I'm low on the target or whatever, but it's shortening my time, heck yeah, I'm going for speed there. I'm doing bill drills, I'm doing that kind of stuff. Carrying appendix, no thank you. That's not when I want that kind of training to be happening and that kind of muscle memory to be created. I want that to be well off the gun as I draw. If you will train methodically, guys. And guys, a striker control device on the back of I cannot make a higher recommendation than having a safety feature like that on your gun. Now, I wouldn't carry appendix if without that striker control device. I think a striker control device, it's a good technology. It's simple. They don't have them for every model and every make of gun, but there's enough of them there that if you don't have, you could get your hands on one of the models that they have. And if you are considering carrying appendix, I would strongly recommend that you get your hands on a striker control device. This is a really good safety device, and I think something that and if you're carrying the gun every day, it mitigates the risk of you having a negligent discharge every single time you put that gun in that holster. So I think it's a critical step that I am grateful that I have, and even with it, I am looking at my goal. I am looking at the runway, knowing exactly where I'm landing that plane. Um, that's an important moment. Same kind of thing on your draw, guys. Look at it at first, practice it, get your pattern down, wear your gun in the same angle, in the same, like, figure out how it's going to sit and wear it that way every time. As time goes on and you get more comfortable with it, don't get complacent. Be safe and stay strapped. Thanks for stopping by.